So, welcome to another episode of the Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about marketer challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers and agencies learn from other marketers across different industries. Today, we're talking with Michael La Kier, Vice President, Brand Development for IGA. The Independent Grocers Alliance is the largest affiliation of independent grocers in the U.S. and frankly around the world, boasting 1,700 plus U.S. stores and over 6,200 plus globally, which is quite impressive. Michael, thanks for joining us today. How have you been?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I
Absolutely,
appreciate it.
absolutely. So I've got a small handful of questions for you, but before we jump into those questions, can you tell me a little bit about IGA, what you do for the organization? I'd like our audience to know what kind of company it is and what you do for them.
Sure, thanks. So IGA, the Independent Grocers Alliance, is a 97-year-old young company. So we've been working with independent grocery retailers to help them better compete in a highly competitive world against chain stores. And that mission really hasn't changed in 97 years. So we interestingly operate as a not-for-profit with, again, that mission of helping independent retailers. Our network, as you said, is broad, almost 6,500 stores globally. So US is our number one market, but we have presence across Eastern Europe, Russia, China, South Africa, Australia. And it's an interesting model because we're a retailer that doesn't own any stores. And so, again, we support the retailers. We work with a variety of manufacturers, strategic partners to bring resources, economies of scale that they couldn't otherwise get. So my role as Vice President of Brand Development is all about those strategic partnerships and helping the retailers make sure that they have the services they need. So everything from tax services, linen rentals, insurance, to working with top CPG manufacturers, everything from Coca-Cola, which was my former employer, to folks like Dano's Seasoning with now 8 SKUs in the seasoning category. So we create bespoke partnerships with CPG companies to help them sell more. Kind of our partnership philosophy is that the CPG brands know consumers better than we do, and they invest against those trends. And if we can help them sell more, we help the retailers sell more. So it's a very varied job. It's a lot of fun, and every day you wake up knowing that you're helping family businesses, which
That's
is a
great.
great thing.
So, are they all branded differently with sort of the IGA umbrella?
Yeah, that's a great question. Several years ago, there was a decision made that it wasn't about the IGA brand, but about the independent
Okay.
grocery retailers. And so you may be familiar with the IGA
Yeah,
red
definitely.
oval that still exists in many markets and many places. About 70% of our stores here in the US have IGA in the name somewhere, some form, some fashion. So it might be Mark's Fresh Foods IGA, it might be IGA of Cincinnati, but in then other cases, you wouldn't necessarily know it by the name or by walking in the door. So the services we provide are obviously brand, visual merchandising, and identity, private label products. So you might have a store that's not IGA branded, but has IGA private
Understood.
label. There's actually a Korean grocer here in Atlanta that phenomenal. You would never know it walking in the door, and then you go into certain sections, frozen vegetables, others, and you see
Okay.
IGA brand. Apple juice, somebody told me the other day they bought. But increasingly, retailers turn to us for analytics, digital marketing services, retail media, and our partnerships of working with CPGs and others and bringing resources they couldn't
Okay.
otherwise get.
Interesting. So, from just a marketing branding standpoint, are you in supporting these stores? How far does corporate go in getting involved to, find marketing resources for individual stores? Do you provide sort of a toolkit that they can use? I've seen situations like that in similarly structured organizations.
Absolutely. And we're what we call a very light touch
Okay.
licensor. And so we have some organizations who only use our learning library. So we have the largest learning library in the grocery industry globally. We have about 400,000 people who go through some form of it annually. And so for some retailers, we customize that and white label it. So it's, retailer A
Hmm.
university. Others come into what we call the Coca-Cola Retailing Institute. So they are able to learn from the tools that we have put out there. So some might only take that. But in terms of, as I mentioned, sort of increasingly the analytics, the data, the marketing services are things that our retailers are
Right.
tapping us for. So we'll work with our analytics division and retailers to better understand what the 5, 10, 15 minute radius is around their stores, how they can best use their
Okay.
marketing mix, and then we'll help them on an ongoing monthly basis to market to the local market. And then for others, we've created 4 years ago what now is called the Retail Media Network, where we have a national digital ad. We're buying media on behalf of all of
Okay.
our stores, drawing them into a digital circular that's mobile friendly, and providing both local content. So we're ingesting their information, might be regional, ad group, wholesaler, and then we're putting national content in from
Okay.
over the top. And that's a service that we provide to all of the members that are within our network
Okay.
here in the US. And interestingly, lots of conversation lately about retail media networks. As I mentioned, ours was created 4 years ago. We now have about 300 million impressions
Okay.
annually. But as I mentioned, we operate as a not-for-profit. So our network was created for two reasons: trips and transactions, not profit to the
Okay.
bottom line. So again, it's all about driving value and driving sales for our
That's great. That's
retailers.
great. So cool. I know we kind of went off script there, but it's fascinating. I just interviewed a guy in for a virtual conference we're doing, who is CEO for a company called AEG Vision, and the model is very similar, where they let the brands keep their local brands, the optometrists, and then they provide a lot of the marketing and operational services to make the operation more efficient. So very very cool. So you have quite a background. Just looking at your background, in addition to your leadership role at IGA, you do advisory work to help startups and established companies capture untapped business opportunities. You're an adjunct professor at Georgia State University. You're a CMO for World Select Cuts, and you're managing editor for Shopper Matters, a publication that covers insights, best practices, and stories from the omnichannel world. I'm exhausted just sort of running through the list. Curious how you do it all, and why do you do it all?
So, great question, and you kind of answered it at the end there. I think I describe myself as a relentlessly curious
Okay.
marketer, and having varied experiences, being able to take things from one industry to another, building out learnings, it is super helpful, I've found, and kind of that notion of bringing all those different experiences in are, valuable to me as a
Sure.
lifelong learner, but then also for the folks that I work with. So I think it stems out of a desire to uh, probably do a lot of things, maybe in some cases at times too much. I'm actually not teaching this
Okay.
spring, just given the new role at IGA. But a lot of it is finding and helping against significant untapped
Okay.
opportunities. So the independent grocery retail world is 33% of the US market, over $250 billion, and it doesn't get the attention it deserves because it's easier to go to a large chain, right? Versus
Right.
onesies, twosies. So it's a great opportunity to jump in to make a difference, to help, as I mentioned, family businesses. In the case of World Select Cuts and Aussie Select, that's a really unique opportunity because it's taking something different, lamb, and turning it into products people are familiar with. So lamb ham, lamb pastrami, lamb prime rib. And if you think about that's very
Yeah.
unique, very different. I've helped them on a number of food shows, and invariably people love the product. And then you have a show of like 5,000 suppliers, and you get people coming day two, day three, and they go, "Oh, you're the lamb ham people, right?" Because nobody
Yeah.
else is doing it, and so it's a unique opportunity to kind of do for lamb what deli
Right.
did for turkey. If you think about it, we only used to eat turkey at Thanksgiving, and now we're like, well, what are you having for lunch today? I guess I'll have a turkey sandwich, right? So there's an opportunity for differentiation. There's an opportunity for
Yeah.
innovation, and those are
That's
things that
awesome.
excite me.
So yeah, talk to me about the World Select Cuts experience. What I mean, is that a separate company, different from IGA, and you're involved with
Yep.
CMO? And yeah, just if you mind just talking a little bit
Yeah.
about that, just because I love lamb. So
Yeah, so before coming to IGA, I had my own consulting firm
okay,
for 10 years after rolling off of Coca-Cola, and had done a lot of space, done a lot of work in the commodity food space for Meat and Livestock Australia. So it's the food board promoting grass-fed beef and lamb worldwide out of Australia. And interestingly, it was kind of a coalition of us who were working on it. And one of my now partners was at the deli case and was waiting in line and was looking around, and it's like, ham, 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 turkey, 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 maybe a roast beef every so often. And we've been working on lamb for years. And he said, well, why don't we do for lamb what deli did for turkey? So in Australia, there's about 20 pounds per capita per person per year of
Hmm.
lamb consumed. Here in the US, it's now about 1.25
Wow,
pounds. So there's huge opportunity in terms of making that protein more mainstream, and deli charcuterie is a really interesting opportunity to do it. But it's very different going from Coca-Cola to a startup, and product development and working with perishable foods and stuff like that. So again, a good opportunity to lean in, to learn, to stretch myself, to do some different things when you have a lack of resources
right, right. I would
comparatively.
imagine the experience at IGA has helped you and working in this role as CMO for World Select Cuts. So that's great. That's really exciting. So I also noticed that you started your career at a direct marketing agency, and you've also consulted with numerous
Mhm.
agencies, including a firm called Response Media, data-driven digital CRM agency. Did I'm curious, did playing on the agency side kind of live up to its expectations of what it would be like going in for you, or
Well, it's I didn't have any expectations really when I started
okay?
my career, because you look and you find a job, but I think the interesting thing about the
Yep.
agency world from my perspective is even though for the first 4 years of my career I worked on one client, but just the work was so varied, and you know then I spent almost 17 years at Coca-Cola and had phenomenal roles. Had a chance to do some fun stuff. Ran the Powerade brand, ran the My Coke Rewards business, ran the shopper marketing strategy and capability team. So meaty roles that there's not a lot of. But I realized that I stayed too long. So I love the roles. I wouldn't change anything. But when I started consulting, to some extent, it got me back to the agency world, of being able to see varied industries, and how the work at Coca-Cola could be used at USA Today and Gannett and General Mills and other places. And so I think the value of the agency experience, especially for me early on, was that I got a chance to look across the entire marketing space and not just, I wasn't just focused on advertising. I was able to do kind of now what we call CRM, and was able to do PR, and was able to do infomercials and all sorts of different stuff. In the case of working with Response Media, it's a great agency based here in Atlanta that does a ton of stuff in the CPG space, so good connection there, as well as healthcare. They've done travel. So again, that varied experience is, I think, super important, because having a variety of clients, having a variety of industries makes things stronger. And I joke, the reason why I got the job on My Coke Rewards at Coca-Cola was that I had the most direct marketing experience of anyone in the company, which says that there wasn't a lot of direct marketing experience in the
Right.
company. And, the the direct connection with your user, your consumer, your guest, your shopper, your member, whatever you want to call them, has always been critical. And whether rewards programs, loyalty, all that being said, if you ask any CMO, they're going to tell you, if you say, hey, do you want a direct relationship with your customer? The answer is going to be yes. And so response media is playing in a phenomenal space in terms of with CRM, and now first party data, zero party data, understanding your customer and who's buying and what's going to motivate them to take
Right.
out their wallet is critically important. And the more you can do that across industries, the more you can do that across brands within an industry, ends up being, building that experience and making it smarter
Right. Is
each
it
time.
is it difficult to apply sort of that thinking to the 1,700 plus IGA network stores? Or are you able to? I know you talked a lot about analytics, but are they able to do that at the level that really makes them as effective as possible in sort of getting to know the customer?
Yeah, so I think the advantage of IGA
Hmm.
affiliated stores, I don't want to say IGA stores as we talked about,
Right.
it's broader than that. They're your local retailer. And so local has always had an advantage in terms of understanding who the
Okay.
shopper is. I know I've been to, unfortunately, we don't have a IGA affiliated store close to me, so I shop at others here in the Atlanta area. And you walk into some of these big box stores and they're like, we're your local store. And they have like photos of the local high school and stuff like that. And you just kind of chuckle a little bit because they're making such an effort to make the connection, as opposed to, I was up recently in New England walking some stores with a fourth generation
Hmm.
owner, and they know him by name, and he knows
Right.
people by name, and he knows who the employees are, and that makes such a difference. And then if you take that ethos on a local level and on a personal level and translate it to the digital space, you're going to have a much
Right.
stronger connection. And
Agree.
so, to
Do
answer
that.
your question, I think it's it's globally, it is hard, but on a store by store or chain by chain basis, it makes it easier because that connection is already there, and you're not having to convince somebody to do something they may not
Right,
otherwise do.
right. So just trying to. I mean, they've got sort of a built-in connection with the community. Are there resources or things that you do to help further that effort? I'm thinking like PR activities or events. Helping them plan and execute events or anything along those lines, or is that pretty much kind of left up to the store at the local level?
I would say we're certainly happy to
Yeah.
help them. We've got a incredibly talented marketing and public affairs team who can help do things like that. But the store owners are, I don't want to say um, remarkably talented in that space in terms of always being connected. They're the ones, and in some cases, they're serving as mayor. In some cases, they're
Oh,
serving as, on the local
okay.
school boards. So they're very, very much aware of the role that they play within the community, and are well thought of, right? To many in many of these markets, they're the first one that local teams turn to for
Mhm.
support or opportunity. So that connection kind of can't be faked. And we help on a corporate level where needed and where they ask, but it's pretty organic, and they mostly
That's
have that
great.
covered.
So you mentioned having sort of public affairs resources internally. Um, I would imagine you guys probably don't work with external agencies for sort of the IGA corporate umbrella. Is that accurate or no? Or is it more of like a B2B trying to attract new stores into the fold?
We do some. So we have a media buying desk. We have an internal
Okay.
analytics group. We have an internal marketing sort of, I guess, group and quasi agency. But we do leverage agencies, for incremental ad buying, for incremental services, content.
Yeah.
To some extent, we are becoming more and more, definitely more than we were 97 years ago, a
Okay.
content company,
Right.
content and data. The fact that our retailers are independent, meaning they buy directly from wholesalers or from, manufacturers from a DSD standpoint. We're unique in that we're a retailer, but we don't have a buying function. And so, marketing services, education, data, content are all things that have become much more important over the past, I guess, 97 years, but definitely
Yeah.
recently.
Yep. So, thinking about the agency world sort of broadly, what would you characterize as sort of their biggest challenge as we sort of roll our way into this new year?
Yes, I think there's so much going on in terms of, if you want to take it specific to retail and support
Hmm.
for that. Coming out of COVID and supply chain issues and inflation, we've seen lots of ups and downs. Last year we saw dollar volume grow, but unit growth
Okay.
start to stall. So to some extent, pricing, uh, collectively, inflation has driven growth versus organic unit growth. And so I think the big challenge this year, and why retailers and manufacturers will work with agencies is, how do we grow more organically in terms of units? And so that's heavy lifting, right? That's not, let's do a splashy TV
Yes.
ad and we'll just get growth. Um, so I think that's a huge challenge. If you think about that challenge, though, combined with everything that's happening in the digital space and the depreciation of cookies and stuff like that, you're now doing some challenging marketing in challenging times. And I think what that means is more and more we're going to rely on agencies that can help us better navigate the digital space, better navigate how do we create one-on-one relationships with our customers, our clients, our guests, whatever you want to call them. And I think that's true probably more broadly than just retail. I think regardless of whether you're a manufacturer, retailer, restaurant, whatever it is, I think more and more it's about, how do we efficiently attract the shoppers and the guests and the customers, people who are willing to take
Yeah.
out their
So
wallets.
based on your experience and having worked with agencies, currently and in the past, uh, how would you sort of rate agencies overall in their ability to be able to do what you just described? Do you feel like it's something that is generally more challenging for them because they're in such a mindset of sort of campaign development, or do you see that evolving and changing?
I, I mean, I think it's definitely evolving and changing. I think the danger is agencies that aren't prepared for it, saying they can
Yeah.
do it. And I think that's, historically, on the client side, that's always been, kind of a, like, have they done this before? Are they the best that can do this for us and for our purposes? So from an agency standpoint, I think, two things are important. One is capabilities, right? So not representing things that you don't have. If it's a learning opportunity for you, then maybe there is a fit there. But being transparent, I think, is important. So that's number one. And number two is, I think, maybe it's not the right word, but empathy.
Yeah.
So I've worked with a number of agencies before who are successful because they dive into the business and they understand the business. And so, for instance, it's not about, um, my email rates are falling off, right? But what am I trying to do? What's email driving? Am I driving, as we talked about, units and dollar volume, right? I have a unit issue. I need to sell more units. Email or, digital media or whatever it is a
Right.
tactic for me to drive that ultimate objective. And I think agencies that can be understanding of the underlying or the overarching
Right.
business as opposed to the tactical
Yeah.
delivery of things are the ones who are most
Yeah,
successful.
definitely. Yeah, I always tell our agency clients and agencies that I speak to that they need to think about sort of the relationship in terms that are greater than just the communication or the creative assignment, and think about it like a business assignment. And so it's great to hear you
Yeah,
say that. I've got two last questions for you. One,
sure.
if you were talking to a marketer in any industry that was thinking about bringing a new agency on board, what advice would you give that marketer?
I think going back to what I said before, it's about making sure you vetted them properly so that the capabilities that they say are the right capabilities for you and the right capabilities that they actually have kind of on tap versus we've sold something and then we'll find somebody to
Hmm.
go deliver it. Unfortunately, that still happens. Um, and again, it's about understanding the business. So I'll give you an example. Even on the client side, when I was running the My Coke Rewards business, we did a whole bunch of coupons. So obviously, join a loyalty program, coupons, discounts are a big piece of that. And on year two, we were reworking some of the things, and somebody from our internal team said, here's what we're going to do with coupons this year. We're going to, double down on coupons for this package. And I'm like, well, why are we doing that? I said, well, because that coupon really resonated with people last year. And I'm like, okay, well, how does that relate to our corporate packaging strategy and our, sort of how it all fits together? And they're like, well, what's that? Right? They were very focused on delivery of the tactic and very focused on delivery of the program. They lost sight of the bigger picture. So I think kind of the empathy and the understanding of the business, as you said, is super important and
Yeah.
can't be understated.
How would you suggest a marketer sort of peel that back? Is it looking at like agency case studies? Is it, any advice there?
I think it's, obviously case studies. I was talking to somebody the other day about, the website. Well, maybe it's a vetting tool, but I don't think it's, deep
Sure.
diving. I think understanding referrals,
Yeah.
understanding other brands that they've worked with, other companies, having a deep dive to really
Yeah.
understanding what they've done. Because you're not going to put a case study out there that's like, well, we only moderately did this, but we had good learning that may have propelled them into um,
Sure.
the next opportunity. But again, that transparency piece, what are you good, what are you
Right.
great at, what are you good at, and what are you not so good
Yeah.
at, and why? And I think that the other danger of working, not just agencies, right? Same thing about martech companies and others is, you can't be all things to all people. So you got to find the right fit and make sure that hey, we can do 90% of the things you want 90% of the time, and that other 10, you know, maybe you're willing to let them try it, or maybe you
Bring
need
somebody
multiple
in. Yeah.
agencies.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
good. So last question. If an agency was trying to knock down your door and attempting to win business from you, what advice would you give them?
don't send me an email saying quick question and making it totally unrelated but
I know
long.
what you're talking
Yeah, we need to get yeah, no, that doesn't exist whatsoever. No, I think it's to show an understanding of the business and show a willingness to understand the business. So I don't expect, coming into the job at IGA, I didn't know everything about IGA, obviously. And you've got assumptions, you've got some thoughts, you've got, things are what you expected, things that aren't what you expected. So I think, obviously cold email solicitations are always difficult, but, there should be some type of connection versus, hey, we've got this and you look like you should use it. So I think, that understanding of it and the willingness to learn and listen and say, hey, we took a look, we thought this, but we don't really know. Is this something that's going to be of value and is it worthwhile
about.
having a conversation? So, you don't go from meeting somebody for the first time to marriage. So like,
Yeah.
keep it calm and, maybe make quote unquote an offering, but not, expect, we want to be your agency of record for everything you do
Sure.
just from
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
conversation.
Makes sense. Well, it's been.
But I think the other piece I would say is, um, I've been on lots of
Mhm.
sides of the door, right? The agency world, the marketing world, the retail world. And, things work very differently depending on what side of the door or what side of the desk you're on. So being again, sort of empathetic and understanding about, hey, you reached out to me last week. That doesn't mean I'm ignoring you. That doesn't mean that I didn't care. But there's a lot going on, and mostly their job's going to be business development. But my job is not business development on the other side for
Yeah.
them. So I think patience is patience is a
There
virtue.
you go. I like that. And it's sometimes
Yeah.
difficult for business development people to be patient, I'm sure. So,
Yes. Well, it's
yeah.
difficult for me too. I understand. Yeah.
That's great. Well, this has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot about IGA and the relationship that you have with all of the affiliate, stores and the opportunities and challenges that exist for them, and learning about you and your background. It's quite impressive. And so I thank you, very much for making the
Thanks.
time today, and wish you nothing but the best going forward.